Another top Trump regime official has abruptly quit, or I should say, was forced to resign under the threat of being immediately fired. The Trump regime in full collapse. It seems not a week passes where there is not another termination of a major official or cabinet member. The latest to quit or to be forced to resign, Dr. Marty Makary, who is the FDA commissioner. The reason that he was forced to resign was that he did not support, apparently, Donald Trump's push to help the tobacco industry by authorizing additional flavored vapes to be marketed to children. Now, let's be very clear. Dr. Marty Makary, not a good guy. A massive anti-vaxxer, a massive conspiracy theorist who pushed lies and propaganda, and who was a major threat to science, to health, to the American public at large. He's one of the people who was largely responsible with RFK Jr. and Donald Trump in changing the vaccine schedule. But the last straw for him in the Trump regime had nothing to do with any of that. It was that he was like, do we really have to advertise flavored vapes to children? And Donald Trump was like, yeah. My buddies in the tobacco industry, they want children to have flavored vapes. So shut up and approve it. And Makary was like, I don't want to do it. And so that was it for Donald Trump. And Trump was like, see you later. You need to resign immediately. And so Donald Trump then put Makary through a humiliation ritual. Donald Trump to make an example out of Makary, Trump made Makary text message him his resignation. And then before Makary was able to himself let the public know that he was leaving, Donald Trump immediately posted the text message in order to humiliate Makary, to make example of him for other people who dare oppose giving vapes to little children. Donald Trump posted this message, a text message from Marty Makary. I just want you to think right now of any employment setting. If any boss in any employment setting did this, you would say the worst human to work for. That's Donald Trump for you, the worst human to work for. Frankly, the worst human right now. Here's what Makary wrote to Donald Trump. And it seems that he was either saying, was he saying, Dear President Trump, or does he call Donald Trump Doctor? Does Donald Trump make Makary call him Doctor? Because he goes, Dr. President Trump. Or maybe it was Dear. Please accept my resignation effective today. During my tenure, I announced 50 major FDA reforms. Joe Biden's FDA had none. I'm extremely proud that we reduced drug review times from a year to 1 to 2 months, wrote new guidance to advance psychedelics, introduced a new plausible mechanism pathway for rare disease drugs, and changed estrogen labels to tell women the truth about menopausal hormone replacement. It's been an honor of a lifetime to serve as your FDA commissioner. I am forever grateful, Dr. Marty Makary. Now, the approval of these psychedelics without going through any scientific method happened because Joe Rogan text messaged Donald Trump and said, I want these to be approved by the FDA. And then Donald Trump said to Makary, you better approve him. And then Donald Trump brought in Joe Rogan while the war against Iran was absolutely raging. Remember that weird Joe Rogan press conference that happened over the weekend? Yeah, or that weekend during the war. That was Makary was involved in that. So then Donald Trump posts, I want to thank Dr. Marty Makary for having done a great job at the FDA. So much was accomplished under his leadership. He was a hard worker who was respected by all and will go on to have an outstanding career. Let's talk about his resignation one more time. As Frank Lutz, a right-wing commentator and pollster, says, and he's quoting a New York Times article, Makary left over concerns about the FDA's decision to authorize fruit-flavored vapes. He told those close to him that he cannot in good conscience approve flavored vapes due to their appeal to young people. And Donald Trump wanted those flavored vapes approved. There were mango flavors and cherry flavors and lemon lime flavors that Donald Trump said, you've got to approve. Now, Let's go bring out some additional receipts. Back in April of 2026, Makary appeared on C-SPAN where they asked him, so how often on a weekly basis are you interacting with Donald Trump? Here's what he said right here. Play this clip.
How often on a weekly basis are you interacting with President Trump? How interested is he in the day-to-day operations at the FDA?
Well, I can tell you President Trump is not afraid to make it very clear to all of us that we have to stay on mission to lower drug prices for everyday Americans, see more cures and meaningful treatments for the American public, especially those with cancer and debilitating conditions and things kids suffer from, including rare diseases, and healthier food for children. And so we have interactions every few weeks, almost several times a week with the staff at the White House. And because we rely on that charge and that vision to do our day-to-day work. And I'm very proud to report that we've announced 40 major reforms year to date in the Trump administration at the FDA.
And then Donald Trump was asked yesterday, did you ask Makary to resign or did you fire him? And Donald Trump, to humiliate Makary's like, I don't want to say. In other words, Donald Trump forced him to resign over vapes. Let's play this clip.
Ask Makary to resign, sir, or did you fire your FDA
Well, I don't want to say it, but Marty's a great guy. He's a friend of mine. He's a wonderful man, and he's going to be off. And the assistant, the deputy, is taking over temporarily until we find. Everybody wants that job. It's a very important job. Marty's a terrific guy, but he's going to go on and he's going to lead a good life. He was having some difficulties. He's a great doctor, and he was having some difficulty, but he's going to go on and he's going to do well. Everybody wants that job.
New year, new routines, but have you ever stopped to think about what your shower water is doing to your skin and hair? There are a whole lot of people out there who spend thousands every year on skincare and hair care trying to fix dryness, breakouts, and dull hair, without realizing that the real problem starts before the products even go on. It's the quality of your shower water. That's where Jolie comes in. Jolie is a beauty wellness company with a clinically proven filtered shower head designed to remove chlorine and heavy metals that can damage your skin and hair. It installs in minutes, fits all showers, looks great, and delivers amazing pressure. And it now starts at just $148. A small upgrade that can make a huge difference in how your skin and hair feel all year long. I installed these in multiple bathrooms around the house, and I felt the difference immediately. Head to jolieskinco.com/Meidas to get yours. That's jolieskinco.com/Meidas. And if you or your loved one don't love it, you can return it for a full refund within 60 days. No questions asked. Also available on Amazon. Start the year with better water. Get Jolie for $148 today.
So then Donald Trump and Makary earlier in the year, as you know, announced a new childhood vaccine schedule, which was absolutely devastating and is absolutely devastating and fatal to children, removing recommendations from doctors and pediatricians, and basically saying that Donald Trump's view that little babies are given like gallons of vaccines to inject in themselves. Like, that's not what happens at all, but that's Donald Trump's, that was Donald Trump and Makary's view. And so I'll show you right here this important moment, just to show you what a bad guy Makary is. This is April 23rd, 2026. And this was when Democratic Congress member Auchincloss cross-examines RFK Jr. about Makary and him making available these psychedelics without going through a process. Whatever we think about psychedelics one way or another, you shouldn't have Joe Rogan sending a text message and that constitutes FDA approval. But that's how things would get approved. Joe Rogan sends a message, approved. Come on, here, play this clip.
There's, in fact, a program called the Commissioner's National Priority Voucher Program. I've been investigating that as well for the last 6 months. This program expressly allows political leaders to short-circuit science and pick and choose politically favored treatments. Now, White House and FDA leadership have pressed staff to award vouchers to certain companies as part of White House pressure campaigns. And most recently and egregiously, the FDA just issued 3 of those vouchers for psychedelics based on a text from Joe Rogan. And one of those psychedelics was denied by the FDA in 2024. So let's just go through what happened here. Joe Rogan had a guest on his podcast, and the guest was talking about psychedelics. Joe Rogan texted the president of the United States, and the president texted back, quote, "Sounds great. Do you want FDA approval? Let's do it," end quote. That was from the president of the United States. So just to be clear, is the president of the United States allowed to grant FDA approval?
The career staff...
Is the president of the United States allowed to grant FDA approval?
The career staff at FDA has all supported that decision.
Is the president of the United States allowed to grant FDA approval? Because he thinks he is. Is he wrong?
He doesn't do it.
He doesn't do it. So, and yet the FDA, within hours...
There's been no FDA approval.
...issued 3 priority vouchers from this illegal, unauthorized program to respond to political pressure from the White House. Secretary, this flies in the face of your stated commitment to putting science over politics. We are literally seeing politics put over science. Now, let's just understand why the president might have bent over to do the bidding of Joe Rogan. He has a disastrous war in Iran that has led even his most committed supporters in his base, like Joe Rogan, to question his competence. And in order to appease Joe Rogan's ire, he grants FDA approval. Safety and efficacy should be the standard for these drugs.
Do you want a grandstand or do you want an answer?
Not
do you want a
president's...
grandstand or do you want an answer?
I want safety and efficacy to be the standards by which psychedelics are approved, not the president's attempt to shore up support from his base for a disastrous war in Iran. It should not be Joe Rogan's decision what psychedelics are approved. It should be the decision of randomized controlled trials.
Now, Makary also bragged that one of the big scourges was the food pyramid. He called it a very corrupt food pyramid, and he was proud of getting rid of the biggest problem facing America, a corrupt food pyramid, everybody. Let's play this clip.
Food. With the new food pyramid that we put out, we ended what was a corrupt food pyramid with an open secret that it never talked about ultra-processed foods, refined carbohydrates, or the importance of fiber on those carbohydrates. It was just calories in, calories out. It didn't matter what the junk food was you put in. It was just a calorie scale.
He was asked, do you believe that there's no vaccine that's safe and effective? Here was his response about that.
Just as baseline, since this is the topic, Secretary Kennedy, before he was secretary, had said that there's no vaccine that is safe and effective. Do you agree with that?
Well, look, with every single medical product, I can just tell you as a physician, what we have to do is evaluate the safety to risk benefit ratio. That is, every single product in all of medicine has some side effect profile, and for some it's rare. And so that's the general framework, and that's what I think he was referring to.
Then he claimed that an NIH funding lab brewed up a virus that killed 20 million people. Just he was a spreader of COVID disinformation. Let's play this clip.
The way it used to be.
We're planning to change our health agencies for a generation or longer. Look at the NIH. When Jay Bhattacharya came in there, it was a mess. 14% of the grants were descriptive studies on health equity, and the NIH had just funded a lab that brewed up a virus that killed 20 million people worldwide. Mm-hmm. So they're getting back to studying root causes, a cure for cancer, debilitating neurodegenerative diseases, and they're going to do good work.
Right.
And then he would talk about, how hundreds of thousands of Americans have claimed that the COVID vaccine was incredibly harmful to them. Let's play this clip.
We talked about the risk calculation that young kids didn't need it. They didn't suffer from COVID. They didn't need to run the risk of the shot. Did that factor into your decision as well, that we're not appropriately measuring the risk of vaccine injury for someone who may not be getting the benefit designed because they weren't at risk for COVID?
Well, as you know, Will, hundreds of thousands of Americans have claimed that they have been injured by the COVID vaccine. And so we've got to listen. It takes a lot of time to do a proper analysis. It hasn't been done to date, and it's got to go into factored into the equation. Now, the recommendation was really based on the voice of many doctors across the country who have said, look at the rest of the world, look at Europe, and look at where we are. We need a more science-based, evidence-based approach.
And of course, as I said, he was a purveyor of lies, a purveyor of all this disinformation. But the reality is, Trump became frustrated with Makary for not moving fast enough to approve flavored vapes and other nicotine products. Makary refused to authorize it was blueberry and mango in addition to other flavors from LA manufacturer Glass, a big Trump supporting group, worried that fruit flavors would encourage youth vaping. After the pressure from Trump, he reversed course, authorized the flavors, but Trump forced him out anyway. And this guy was despised by everybody. Everybody hated him. The Trump MAGA people despised him. The people who don't like Trump despised him. And I'll just leave everybody with this. Maha, make America healthy again. Donald Trump's view, glyphosate, a herbicide, carcinogen, for everybody. You get glyphosate, you get glyphosate, you get glyphosate. In fact, we're going to invoke the Defense Production Act to push out glyphosate to as many people as possible. We're going to file amicus briefs before the United States Supreme Court to say that state failure to warn laws are preempted by FDA regs and other health department regs and the federal level, which the Trump regime argued allow the proliferation of glyphosate. So state laws, state rights, state laws on failure to warn, they should all be preempted by Donald Trump's view of glyphosate for everybody. Flavored vapes, get them in the mouths of little children. Blueberry flavors, lemon lime flavors, mango flavors. This Trump regime is unhinged and it's coming apart before our eyes. Let me know what you think, folks. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers, y'all. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to add the MeidasTouch podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new updates every single day.